I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Welcome everybody to something new that we're trying out for the first time with the TV here in the meeting room with 3 members of the board here, 1 distant on remote, and Ted Kennedy will be absent from the meeting tonight. So we'll move on to the minutes of May 18th, 2021. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes for, what is that one?
May 18th.
May 18th, yep, 2021 as presented.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second. Looking at page 1. And page 2. And page 3. Did you want to mention the item number 13?
Yes. Item number 13, the spelling of poorhouse should be changed to P-O-U-R and a space house.
Thanks. I'll make that adjustment.
And page 5, under the motion at the top of page 4, I beg your pardon, page 4, the motion at the top of page 4 should indicate that Jeff abstained from that, so the motion will be unanimous 4-0 with 1 abstention. Hearing no other corrections then, I presume that Jeff, you're abstaining from the vote on this because you joined us very late.
Yeah, I think just as you guys were basically saying goodbye. So yes, I agree. I should abstain.
So all those in favor of approving the minutes of May 18th, 2021, say aye.
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 Aye, 3, and 1 abstention from Jeff, so 3, 0, and 1. And moving on to public comment, if there's anyone in the listening audience or viewing audience that wishes to make any public comment on any issue, this is your time to do so.
Terry, I don't see anyone in the chat who would like to make a public comment this evening, so we should be set.
Okay. Then we can move on to interviews and appointments. And we have 2 different, we have 4 people interested in running for the Library Board of Trustees and 2 people interested in the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And I think we can take the 4 that are interested in the Library Board first and welcome them to join us remotely.
Yep, I'll get them connected right now, Terry, and I see everybody at home. I'll just be connecting you momentarily here. Just
Sure.
You'll be reconnected in just a moment. See Sherry and Justin, Steve and Barbara. Can you hear us okay?
Sure can.
And hi, Barbara, are you there? You need to unmute.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, we can hear you. Terry, we've got all four connected here.
Good. So what we're going to be doing tonight is interviewing all four of you at one time, asking you to give a brief statement of your interest in running for the seat on the Library Board of Trustees, and giving us a little bit of your background, even though we do have your applications in front of us. And then we'll go on from there to asking you individual questions one at a time. So I think what we'll start out doing is I'll ask you one by one to do exactly what I said, and we can start with Sherry Westman.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to interview tonight. I'm glad to be here with you. As you know from previous interactions, I have a background in public service and a background in local government, and I love being involved in my community. One of the pieces of my experience in government was with the City of New York. I worked at the Office of Management and Budget with the Cultural Affairs and Libraries budgets. And I know that might sound like it's really different from a single town library, but the system is very large, but each individual library serves the community in a similar way to any other library in any other town or community, including, providing obviously books and, other services for borrowing, but also allowing people to have access to the internet and job searches and community meeting spaces. And I, as I've mentioned in other interactions, really believe in spaces for people to come together and gather as communities, to learn from each other when they maybe have differences of opinions. And I think libraries are just wonderful resources within a community to do that. And having some experience with libraries and also having visited our library a lot, I'd love to participate and be a part of the board.
Thank you. Steve Shepard.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Just a couple of thoughts. I mean, I want to echo one of the things that Sherry said. I really agree with her point that the library is more than just that. It's more than the traditional role that it normally plays. I actually believe that libraries today are probably the only truly public space that communities have anymore. And as a consequence of that, I think libraries have been called upon to become much more than what they have traditionally been seen as, a repository of books. I mean, to Sherry's point, they provide internet access, they provide a place for healthcare consulting, they provide help with technology, they provide programmatic material that's important for people, and so on. I had an opportunity a few years ago. The nature of my work is such that I spend a lot of my time traditionally before COVID outside of the United States. A lot of my work is in the developing world. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to work with a group of folks in Southern Africa, just north of the South African border, to create basically a community center that would bring 3 villages together. And the only thing they shared was their 58-book library. And what we ended up doing was dragging broadband into the library. And that library became not just the library, but the community center, the local clinic, the school, and a gathering place for everyone. And those 3 villages essentially became a single community as a result of that. And jobs were created, skills were created because of that fundamental library nexus that kind of drove everything. And I see this library in Williston becoming that same kind of thing. And I want to be part of it, or I'd like to be part of it, because I see it as a place that has great potential and a great future, but it requires a lot of community activism, a lot of community involvement, and a great deal of communication to make that happen, to help people understand and appreciate what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Coons.
Yep. Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you about this position. I was mostly driven to apply for the position because I do love the Dorothy Ailing Memorial Library. I have 3 children myself, and we frequent it often. I was also kind of feeling that call to community service and try to find more ways where I could get involved in the town of Williston, and also within my homeowners association where I live here in Williston. I'm a St. Michael's College graduate, 99. I've been in Williston since about 2016. And, my daily work, one of the things I think I could bring to the trustee position is information technology angle. I do software implementation here in Vermont for a local software company. And I do also think that I could help to represent the voice of families with children that also enjoy the library as much as we do as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And Barbara Shosey.
I'm sorry, my picture isn't there. I don't know what happened. I am not technology minded. I'm retired. I haven't worked in a long time. I've used the library extensively during the pandemic for porch pickup. I have lived in Williston for 21 years in the same condo community. I was born in Vermont. I have no children or grandchildren. And my past work experience involves bookkeeping. I was development director for the Discovery Museum. I've written grants, I've done press releases, and I've been a volunteer coordinator for Vermont Public Radio. But that's all old stuff, and I'm old. I've got white hair. Since you can't see me, you don't know that, but I do. And that's my story.
Thank you, Barbara. Did you years ago work for the Department of Health?
Yes, I did. And I worked for Cathedral Square, Williston Woods, and Whitney Hill, and Gardner's Four Seasons Gardner's Center, right before it became Gardner's Supply, in North Country Tile, is where I worked in Burlington, in Williston. I've had other jobs in retail in Burlington and VPR in the health department.
Good, thank you. So now I'll open it up to questions from the board for all of you, and if for whoever has the first question, we'll start and go in reverse order. Anyone with questions? Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, okay, I'll start. The guy at home. This question, I think for everyone is some more than others you've talked about your vision for a library, or maybe how a library fits best into Williston. My question gets a little bit more specific, and it's along the lines of what areas do you think the library is not maybe providing a service or a function it could? And then the opposite is as technology and we grow, what area maybe should the library no longer provide a service or function that it currently provides? Your thoughts on that, and tied into that is, have you had a chance to read either in the town plan or through the library itself, their vision for how to grow, and your thoughts on that? So a little bit of a loaded question, but hopefully it works for you and me.
So we'll start with Barbara.
This evening I read the minutes of the last library trustees meetings and the plan through 2023. And I don't know the resumes of the librarians. I have spoken with Jane and participated in Zoom conversations with Jane, the library director. I've donated books to the library, and I found them very responsive. I think that the library should continue to keep its doors open and not rely so much on technology, primarily now that COVID is over, but have that as an adjunct. I'm wondering how much federal money is going to be coming in. And I'm also wondering when the census demographics are going to be released. Those are my primary questions at this point. And I saw as part of the plan that the library is trying to figure out what to do along with the select board as far as a new library facility and a community center for the town of Williston.
Thank you. Justin?
I guess I had a couple things come to mind. I do think now that we're sort of reopening post-COVID, I think that it's going to be very important strategically for the library to focus on community events and, you know, really bringing people back together again and trying to encourage that as much as possible. I think we'll see a lot of the community and patrons really be interested in this and support the library with those events. And then again, maybe this is a little bit personal, but I think that my family, my community, I live over in the Brennan Woods Indian Circle and Taft Farms area. We have really taken advantage of the bookmobile. I think that's a great service that you don't really see in a lot of other places. At least I haven't. A lot of other libraries offering that. I think it's a little bit unique to Williston also. So I would, you know, I think that's another area of focus and of interest for the library.
Thank you.
Thanks. Steve?
I'm actually fairly happy with the range and breadth and depth of the services that the library provides. I suppose I could come up with a few things they're not doing, but I think the more important issue here is that I'd like to see the library do more informational outreach to more deliberately, and I hesitate to use the word, but I will anyway, a little bit more aggressively let the community know everything that it has to offer. I am always astonished, and that's a well-chosen word, when I walk through the library and I see, you know, robotics programs and projects, and I see the diversity of children's programs going on, and, you know, the programmatic content around workshops and that kind of thing. My concern, and I realize this is a little bit anecdotal, but I don't think as many people know about all those programs as they should. And I think if we did a better job of letting the community know what all is available, we might see, you know, greater utilization of the facilities. In terms of what kind of the other end of that question, I think that needs to be really turned over to the community itself, and they need to be asked, what could we be doing or not doing, as the case may be, that you would like to see in terms of enriching our community. I think to Justin's point, there is kind of a grand plan ahead, if you will. There's a lot of good work that's been done by the town of Williston in terms of the role of the library and so on. But I'd like to see more community outreach and involvement to help us better define what that looks like. Like I said, it's more than a library. It's not just a repository of books. It's a repository of skill and knowledge. And I think if people knew that better, we'd get better uptake, better use.
Thanks. Sherry?
Hi, thank you. Most of my experience with the Dorothy Alling Library is bringing my kids there, going to the crafts and the story hours. And I will say that I've found a lot of community at the library. I found community with my kids. I've found that they did events geared toward the kids that were great, both inside of and outside of the library. Even during COVID, they did the movies outside last summer, which I thought was really a wonderful way to allow people to gather still in a way that was safer given the conditions and what was going on with COVID. As we appear to be exiting that, one of the things that I feel like I've seen some in the community this year, it's hard to say in the community, most of what I've seen in the community has been on Facebook through the Williston Parents Group. And I don't really want to be on Facebook. And I find that that's one of the few places that I get information, that and I guess the school bell. And I agree that there could be some increased communication and dialogue and reaching out to the community to find ways to connect community members, both with the community at large, with services that they're looking for, and with services that they need. I've seen, you know, people reaching out on Facebook for work opportunities, and I've seen people reaching out on Facebook because they, you know, there are, you know, food boxes that are being offered. And I would love to see an opportunity where there is more communication and less of it is through Facebook. And I think that perhaps the library is a really good place to distribute that information and to offer people a place to connect with other places within the community. One of the things with my kids when they were younger that I was always trying to figure out and had a hard time with was ways for them to be involved to help in the community. And I always thought that the library might be a place that could connect people in that way. So I would love to see just more connections, ways to connect community with services that they need, or ways to connect people within the community to places to help out if they have something to offer to the community, no matter the age. I also think, especially in the last few years, and especially with the silos of the internet and social media, it feels like there's less interaction of people who I think would be, for our communities, we would be better off if we were dialoguing together. And I think that the library is a good space for that. As Stephen mentioned, there's information and there are resources. Obviously, there are books and there's learning, and there's such an opportunity to enrich ourselves as individuals with resources in the library. But I think it's also a space where people can come together and enrich ourselves as a community. And so I would love to see that. I spoke with Jane a little bit and asked about the job searches, because I know that that's something that the Brooklyn Public Library was doing. They were making a really big effort to connect people who were searching for work and who needed opportunity, to create that space where they could use the internet and where they could use other resources that were available that they didn't have access to at home. So I guess the other thing would be, you know, making sure that people in the community know that if they don't have access to something at home, like the internet, the library can be a useful space for them to connect with other resources they need. And I don't know that I would get rid of anything at the library. The resources I just think are so valuable. I love the library. I just love it.
Thank you so much. Are there further questions from the board?
So thank you all for all your passion that I'm hearing of things that are going well and reporting out on things that you would still like to promote. My question, I think, is short, but might be hard. If you had one wish for the library, what would it be?
So we'll start with Steve.
I'm going to go back to what I said a moment ago. I want it to be a place where people look forward to going as often as they possibly can, because it offers so much enrichment to their lives. I mean, I'm not trying to sound sort of Pollyannish here, but I want it to be that nexus, that community center point that a library should be. And I I think we can do that. I mean, I think as an organization, I mean, I know that the board is doing a great deal of that. I know the town sees that as an opportunity, but I've seen it, as my colleagues here have as well, as my fellow candidates. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see it be a place that people think about first when they think about Williston.
Thank you, Steve.
Justin?
I guess I'll mention about kind of the interest in sort of increasing the number of community events that the library puts forth going forward. I think that would be great. And I also think that even though the porch pickup was something that came as a result of COVID, I'm very curious to kind of see if there's interest in keeping that as an option going forward too, because it's convenience. And I think, you know, we all have busy lives, and there's times when we don't necessarily need to go into the library. We just need to get the book that we really want. And I'm kind of curious to see if that'll stick around. Thanks.
Thanks.
Sherry?
I think as a parent of still relatively young children, and there's probably something there, but my wish would be something that could draw me in for me. I would love to see something where people who are often doing things for the rest of the people in their household can have that draw that brings everyone together, where everyone can do something, but also where there is a connection for people who don't know how to fit it in sometimes, who don't know when or where it's their place to get into it. It's easy for me to say, oh, an opportunity for my children, I'll get them into that. It's harder for me to say, seek out an opportunity for me. That's why I'm doing this. I want to be involved, but this is a different level of commitment than just the one-off events that might bring someone in who wants to be connected occasionally, but can't really make a long-term commitment or doesn't know if they want to. Something that really reaches out and brings people in who aren't already seeking it out or want it, but don't know how to find it.
Thank you.
Barbara?
I'm concerned about underserved populations who can't necessarily make it to the library, who are homebound, which I am much of the time, who I support Dottie and really, really hope that some federal money comes through the town that will pay for another Dottie number 2, to go out in the community, to the elderly and to young children in areas where they're latchkey kids, where they go home from school on the bus and their parents are at work. And I think it's important to get a physical book, particularly for young children, picture books, which I've donated quite a few already. Well, not quite a few, but a number, into children's hands. I started reading at a young age, and I am not comfortable with reading books on the internet, particularly. I prefer to have them in my hands. And the library's been good about that. And I must say the library staff has been amazing. They've responded to my questions. I've asked them about where the bookmobile goes and where it could, and I made suggestions about where it could go. They gave me a copy of Book Pages, and I ordered those books, and most of them, and suggested others, and they bought them. And they have the books in their collection now. I just think a book's a precious thing. A computer's a precious thing too. But a book is a very, very precious thing to hold in your hands, and you can't see what a picture looks like that an artist has drawn, or really understand the text that an author has written in a picture book for children unless they can actually hold it in their hands. I guess I've sort of rambled here, but that's me.
Great. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Any-
Barbara. That was a great statement.
Any other questions from the members of the board? I didn't hear any more questions from the board, so how we're going to proceed with this is that we will cease the interview for this board at this moment. We'll be taking this up as more or less the last item on the agenda, which is scheduled for around 9 o'clock tonight, but it may be a little bit earlier than that. You're certainly welcome to listen in at the rest of the meeting, but if you wish to, and obviously it's an open meeting, and our decision will be made in public. So if you wish to reconnect in or stay with us for the length of the meeting, that's fine. But I would anticipate that we won't get back to doing this until probably 8:30ish or so. So thank you all for your willingness to take part in town government in Williston.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. And so we'll move on then to the next part of the interviews and appointments, and that is for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And we have two candidates for that particular position.
Yep, and I'll get folks connected in just a moment, moving some folks in and out of the meeting right now. And Sherry and Justin, I'm just moving both of you back to attendees. And then I'll get our two candidates for CSWD connected right now. Can both of you hear us okay? Yep. All set, Sarah.
So welcome. We have two candidates tonight, Chittenden Bogaski and Mike Quaid. And what we'll do is to ask both of you to give us a brief summary of why you should be on the Chittenden Solid Waste District Board and a little bit about your background. And we do have your applications in front of us. And we'll start out with Kelton.
Thank you very much, and thank you guys for allowing me to interview for this position. So a little bit about myself. I graduated from UVM back in 2017. I'm not initially from Vermont, but moved up here for school and moved away for a little bit after graduation, then ended up moving back up to Vermont just because it's where I wanted to be, where I enjoy living, all the activities I like doing. So moved back up here and moved to Williston about end of last year. I bought a house in Williston and moved here. A little bit about myself. So graduated from UVM, been staying involved in different local groups. I advise a group at UVM's campus, as well as last year I got to serve on the Walk to End Alzheimer's Committee, the Walk Planning Committee. So that was an awesome experience. Really what I kind of brought me as CSWD board is, so I do work for Casella, and I have been attending the CSWD board meetings for about 2 years now. Just kind of seeing what they do every day. And when I was on, I really wanted to find something volunteer wise that fit my interest and fit my expertise, and kind of what I see is the CSWD board has an incredible mission and really has a lot of resources to carry out that mission of helping reduce waste, helping to educate residents across all of Chittenden County. And obviously with Williston, they play a very special part because we are the host community for their different facilities and for facilities that they're looking to possibly expand or increase services. I just see a lot of opportunities with upcoming decisions they're going to make. And I feel like since my job, I'm an outside sales rep for Casella. So a lot of what I get to do is I work with business owners every single day. I work with members of the community. I really hear where we're struggling as a community, especially with our waste and really where we're struggling to reduce our waste. And I truly feel that every Vermonter wants to do the right thing. Sometimes it's just really confusing what the right thing is. It's really confusing what belongs in recycling, what belongs in compost, and I think it's a constant battle to be able to educate people and to be able to provide those resources. And definitely excited to be here. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Mike? You're muted, I think, Mike. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. We're having problems, Mike, with hearing you.
It looks like you're muted. Oh, he's going to leave and come back, I think. It worked first on, so hopefully we'll get him back here in just a moment.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Welcome back.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. A lot of times I got to check out and come back in and I can talk. How about the camera?
Not
Is
yet.
that under Eric's control or? Let's see if I can do that.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Let's start all over again. But thanks for having me here. I've been involved in town government for many years. I served on the representative of the Champlain Water District for quite a while. I was on the zoning board for quite a while, 2 terms in the legislature. And while I was in the legislature, I also served on the Lake Champlain Committee. Governor Douglas appointed me to the Board of Professional Engineering, which I chaired for 6 years. But for the last 14 years, I've been working out of town for a company over in New York, managing construction projects. And so I've been really out of town and out of touch with the town for quite a while. But I recently retired and I've got time on my hands and wanted to get back involved in helping out town government. And I saw the listing in the Observer a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that piqued my interest was the solid waste district. I'm a civil engineer, graduated from Cornell in 1975. I've been a professional engineer. And so this was one of the things that I thought I could be useful in bringing an engineering background and perspective to the solid waste district to make sure that they're running things as efficiently and economically as possible, and try and help them with that. For example, they're over there on Avenue C at the recovery facility there. They crush glass, and for whatever reason, they haul it all the way to Winooski to use it in the asphalt plant. Whereas we've got an asphalt plant right on Avenue A, And I don't know why it gets hauled over there, but things like that that could be investigated further, I thought I'd like to get involved in and help them as an engineer.
Thanks, Mike. So I'll open it up to questions from the board for the two candidates.
So short-term and then also long-term, what do you see as the most important issues or priorities facing the Chittenden Solid Waste District?
So we'll start with Mike and then go to Kelton.
I think that the main thing is getting their recycling operations tuned up and organized. I know there's a lot of people out there that either they don't care enough or they don't know enough, or for whatever reason are not participating fully in the recycling. And now with the new program for composting, those are the kind of things that needs to get developed better and get more community involvement and outreach.
Kelton.
Yeah, so I kind of have two for each of those. Short term, I think obviously kind of what I hit on initially, education outreach. That's going to be a forever goal. That's definitely a big priority. But on top of that, CSWD, as of January 1st next year, will no longer accept compostable products at their Green Mountain compost. So I think that's a big pressing issue, in my opinion, that there's a lot of business owners, a lot of people in the community. I mean, if we look at businesses in Williston alone, you have Bliss Bee, you have Healthy Living. I know Eli Lesser spoke on their call when they made that decision. So I think it's a big conversation around what can we do so that we're not jumping back on sustainability goals of all these companies and going back to single-use products, so that we can still work to use compostable products that people are willing to pay more money to do the right thing. But how can we make it so the right thing doesn't create a bad product for CSWD and their compost? And as far as long term, I think there's two big things that I kind of identified. Obviously, the MRF. They want to build a new MRF, so that's a big decision on how do you build it for the next 40 years, so you don't need to build another one. But then the other question is, what can you do with the old building? Is there a way we could offer some sort of specialized recycling, say styrofoam or something that's not currently captured in the zero sort recycling bins? And then the last piece kind of hit on what Mike was hitting on with glass recycling, because that's obviously a hot button issue. And recently, a company called Glavel moved into Vermont, and they pretty much make recycling. They recycle glass into glass foam insulation. And my question is, how do we continue to incentivize companies like that to come to Vermont, so we're not trucking our recycling products, especially heavy products like glass, out of state, or because not all of it can go into road base, and not all. So how do we find good outlets that are local and incentivize local outlets, like a company like Glavel, to move to Vermont, so that we can recycle our material that we produce in Vermont, that we can recycle it in Chittenden County or just right outside.
Thanks. Other questions for the candidates?
Jeff, I'll ask a question. My question is along the lines, shift gears a little bit, and I want to try to understand what you view as your role as being a commission member, and what that means in terms of how you will represent, the town, Williston, and kind of, I guess, as I think my question through, how might you reach out, and who might you reach out to figure out, what is it you should be representing as Williston's representative to the board? So first question is did that question make sense? And hopefully yes. And then, what is your answer?
We'll start with Kelton.
Yep. No, I had actually called Eric about this and just kind of getting engaged for what Jeremy had done in the past for the town, as well as what he would like to see going forward. And I think the biggest thing is, obviously I do work at Casella, so there are going to be certain conversations I would have to recuse myself from to avoid a conflict of interest. That's not something obviously I want to get into, any conflicts of interest. But I think really with talking with Eric, it's communicating with the board and being able to, okay, there's big decisions coming up. What does the board want to do? And being able to, one, provide what we talked about at the board meeting, as well at the CSWD board meeting, bring that back to the board and say, okay, here's what they're presenting. Here's what, from my experience of working with different business owners, here's what I see. So what's our decision as a town? What decision do we want to make? Because at the end of the day, it's really up to it's up to the select board to make the decision, especially on these bigger items. It's more my job is to go to the meetings and be able to report back on here's what I see. And I think what I was looking to do was, after every meeting, provide just a little snippet that you guys could share in the manager's report, with just something that, like, here's what's going on. And not every meeting is going to have a lot going on at it that really needs to be talked about, but still at least giving the select board the bullet points on here's what we went through, here's big items coming up, or hey, we need to make a decision by next meeting on this topic. What do we want to decide? Here's what I've seen. And I'm happy to attend any meetings as well that I need to, especially when it comes to those larger decisions that will be coming up around organics diversion facility, or around the new MRF, or even around if they decide to make any charter changes, like even in my opinion, talking about like the effects that not accepting compostable products will have on different businesses in the town and different residents, and just being able to keep everyone aware on those type of big changes.
Thanks. Mike?
Yeah, there's not a lot that I can add to that. The main thing is trying to get a sense of what the select board wants to have carried across to the solid waste district. It's certainly a matter of communications and being in touch. And the best thing I could promise is same thing, that a report after every meeting, letting you guys know what's going on, so that you're informed also.
Thank you. Other questions from the board?
Well, one question, I don't mean to dominate here, is tonight we're going to be talking about the CSWD's budget. Have you had a chance to look at it and your thoughts on it?
So start with Mike.
I have not.
Okay, and fair enough.
I attended their meeting where they did their review of their budget. That's definitely a tough question. Looking at, I think obviously it's a large budget. I think that what I'm excited to see is they're making some capital improvement projects that are saving them money long term, and they've done a good job making a lot of their programs pay for themselves rather than subsidizing certain programs. So their organics recycling facility, organics diversion facility, really working so that it's not subsidized, as well as same with the drop-off centers as well, working to help instead of subsidizing those with their other programs, to make it so that they really hold their carrying costs. So I think they've done a good job, and they've made a lot of great improvements with the organics facility. They brought in a windrow turner, so they really cut down on labor time, as well as can put out products a lot faster. And then even coming up big capital projects, they're going to be moving the water lines over to the organics facility rather than where it stops currently on Redmond Road at Global Foundries, so that they're not paying as much money to truck water a quarter mile up the street. So little stuff like that process improvements that can help save money in the long term. I haven't dug into their budget, but I that's just kind of what I got from their past few meetings here.
Okay.
Thanks.
If I could follow up, if you don't mind, and I don't mean to dominate conversation here. There used to be, maybe, I don't know if that's really the best way to put it, maybe still currently, there is a philosophy that said you want to incentivize recycling or waste diversion and disincentivize disposal. And one way to do that was to make things like recycling or food waste drop off free of charge. And then you subsidize that through your fees that you would collect for disposal, materials to be disposed of. And I guess simply asked, do you agree with that philosophy, or should that philosophy change? And briefly, why?
You're asking this of Mike or both?
Both.
Both.
Both. Oh, no, both.
Okay, let's start with Mike.
Well, that's, I can't see that there's any fault in that really, because that's really what we're trying to do is divert as much as possible out of the landfills and the expense of the landfills. And, there's carrots and sticks to human behavior. And so, we're not going to change the people. We have to take them as they are, and incentives matter.
And Kelton?
It's a tough question. Really getting down to, I do agree that you have to incentivize doing the right thing. I think you already look right now, it is incentivized in the fact that there is a per tonnage fee on trash that's collected in Chittenden County. So every ton of trash that comes out of Williston, no matter who creates it, there's $26 that go to incentivize CSWD's other programs, whether it's their education, whether it's their line, whether it's their for marketing material. So they already do incentivize it. I think it's tough because at the end of the day, everything is recyclable, just at what cost? Everything everything could be recycled. It's just where do you send it? How do you collect it? How far are you shipping it? Like, are we shipping it all the way to Texas to recycle it? And really, what's the environmental benefit to recycle? So it's definitely tough. I think the big thing is how do you also look to put the cost back on producers rather than just on, and incentivize it that way. Incentivize it where if you're buying a product with more trash, like in its packaging, with worse packaging, how do you make that product cost more than the company that's investing in products that use less packaging? So I think it's really going to those ERP laws and pushing those in the State House so that we're incentivizing, because at the end of the day, we can't put all the onus on consumers to do everything. We really need to be making those decisions at the business level, and the consumers need to be making it with their purchasing decisions on purchasing products that use less packaging and incentivizing. There's a lot of ways to incentivize doing the right thing, but money's definitely a big factor. If it hits you in the wallet, you're going to change your decision.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, Terry, it seems like maybe it's appropriate time to ask for that question that traditionally falls on me, which is a conflict of interest question. And in this case, Kelton, you've already addressed it to a degree. I think we all know that Casella and CSWD, there is the potential to be conflict of interest. So in addition to the question which normally ask is, how would you recognize it? What would you do about it? In this case, in this case for you, Kelton, I think that also extends to, would it undermine your ability, your needing to recluse yourself, your ability to be an effective commissioner? And I hope that question's okay. I don't mean that in any negative way whatsoever. But I feel it's important to get at least your perspective on that. I want that.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely something that I expected. as a question. And I think at the end of the day, conflict of interest only arises when some information I get benefits Casella and puts Casella to advantage to anybody else. And I don't think, I think if you look at it, most of the time, I attend all those meetings. I know everything that's happening at all those meetings and all those conversations. So I don't think there's a conflict of interest in 99% of scenarios. I think there's certain information that when they go into executive sessions, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't attend certain items. I don't think it'll hurt me in representing the town, because in most major decisions, what they decide to take at their MRF doesn't affect Casella differently, or how they decide to build their MRF. It benefits the entire community. It benefits every resident, every hauler, everyone who decides to get rid of stuff in Vermont. So in same with most decisions. So as long as I go in with that mindset, and I'm not going in trying to get insider information, or I think that most of the decisions they make are public record, and conversations they have are public record, and are really just, I get to go in with a level of understanding and expertise of the industry that it's a lot harder for someone else to have that doesn't really understand the intricacies of recycling markets and how the different laws in Vermont. I actually operate the solid waste implementation plan for the town of Fairfax as well as town of Lowell, Vermont. So what the CSWD is tasked with carrying out their SWIP, I work with different towns to help operate that. So I feel like it can help bring that level of expertise to the board.
Okay.
And Mike, your response?
I don't think I have any conflict that I'm aware of.
Now that you're retired?
Right.
Making it hard on me here.
Any further questions for our two candidates?
No.
Hearing none, we will be making this decision later on tonight. Currently, we're scheduled to do this at 9 o'clock. It might occur earlier than that. You're certainly welcome to listen into the rest of the select board meeting, or to tune back in later on, not before 8:30, I'm sure, by the looks of the things that we have going on our schedule. But thank you both for coming tonight and being willing to work for the town of Williston.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on then to the Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 22 budget, and we'll have Sarah Reeves, the general manager of CSWD, talking to us remotely.
And Sarah, I see I'll get you connected. And we also have our current alternate commissioner, Kaylin McCamp, is going to
that's
join
right.
us as well this evening.
Kaylin McCamp will be on as well.
Good
I think
evening.
I'll see Sarah.
Kaylin's just getting connected.
So welcome, Sarah. We had you on our agenda a couple of weeks ago for an overview of what's happening at the solid waste district, and tonight we're talking about the budget. So if you could give us a brief description of what you're proposing, we would be appreciative.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And for any who may be tuning in and maybe new to Chittenden County or new to the district, CSWD is a municipal district created in 1987 to oversee and manage solid waste generated in Chittenden County. And as you heard, we are governed by a board of commissioners who are volunteers. And each of our 18 cities and towns represents someone to our board. Our mission is to reduce and manage the solid waste generated in Chittenden County in an environmentally sound, efficient, effective, and economical manner. And as mentioned, I'm here to talk about our fiscal 22 budget. When I come to talk to folks about our budget, I like to talk about how both we are funded and how we are not funded. I think it's important to understand both. So we are funded in three main ways. The first way is through user fees or tip fees. And those are fees that we charge our customers directly for materials that they bring to us to manage or to sort, so to our drop-off centers or to our materials recovery facility. The second source of our revenue, main source, is the solid waste management fee. And that is a per ton fee on material that is sent to the landfill in Coventry, and we charge $27 a ton. The third main area is on material and product sales. So those are from items that we collect, sort, and produce for sale at our facilities, and then ship out to the market. So things like our compost products, our local color paint, and the recyclables that are sorted at the MRF. We are not funded by property tax dollars, by local income tax, local sales tax. We do not assess a per capita fee to our member towns. So we don't receive anything directly from any of our member towns as far as revenue. All of our revenue is generated from those three main areas. And we receive some grants as well, but nothing directly from our cities and towns. We do not send you a bill for our services. So the fiscal 22 budget, we are anticipating revenues in the amount of $12,954,793. And we are fairly certain that that is a conservative amount, and I will talk about why we feel that way in a moment. We are looking at total expenditures after capital allocations of $12,323,072. The remainder between those two will be divided amongst three of our reserve funds: our solid waste management fee reserve, our biosolids reserve, and an operating reserve. We are not anticipating raising many fees this coming year at all. In fact, we're only raising fees at the compost facility slightly on inbound food scraps. So we're raising that from $60 a ton to $65 a ton. And then the fees on biosolids are raising slightly, and that only affects the members who are participating in the biosolids program, and it's a pass-through, and it is directly related to the amount of material that is generated. So there's an estimate on the amount of material generated, and then that's how the fees are determined. All of the other fees are remaining the same. So no increases at the drop-off center, no increase at the materials recovery facility. So the reason I say that we're anticipating that this is going to be a conservative revenue estimate is that we are expecting to have robust sales in both the compost program and in the MRF, and similar to what we saw last year. So last year, as a direct response to COVID, we sold through our compost products in record time. We are selling through our compost products again in record time this year. We are sold out of most of our compost, and we are expecting to have another similar good year in the spring of calendar 22. And that was directly related to people being home, starting gardens, building gardens, growing, enlarging their gardens, and that has continued. Similarly, we experienced very robust material sales out of the MRF last year, which is the complete opposite of what I've been talking to you about over the past few years. And that is also a result of increased demand, in part due to COVID, for paper products, cardboard, and other recycled papers. Cardboard, obviously, people were working from home and being home more and ordering online and receiving things in boxes, just driving up the demand for cardboard. Also, a lot of products that are made from recycled paper, such as paper towels, toilet paper, and wipes, were in high demand. So those drove the value of the materials that we produce, which is good news because 80% of what we process in the MRF are those fiber products, those paper products. So that was a real boom to us last year, and that demand has continued. In addition, you may recall I've been talking about the capacity to manage those materials domestically was increasing, and that has continued even through COVID and through the last couple of years of economic crisis and up and down. That capacity has increased. So we're seeing that we're starting to feel the benefits of that capacity coming online. In fiscal 22, we are anticipating another very big capital investment year. We had a large capital investment year last year as we were expanding the compost facility in anticipation of the final throes of Act 148 with that July 1 deadline, with all food scraps being needed to keep out of the landfill. So we're continuing with that expansion. We have completed phase 1 of the expansion. We're now looking at phase 2, which will be to change the approach that we have into the facility to give a longer queuing line and to bring the vehicles off the road faster and sooner. And then we're also looking at making improvements to several of our drop-off centers, scheduled improvements, starting with Milton, also working on some projects at Essex, and then in the spring at Richmond. We've also made some improvements this past year, and we're going to continue to take a look at them in Williston. We pulled food scraps out of the main area, so if all you have to drop off in Williston are your food scraps, we've created a separate line for that to make it very easy. You don't even have to go into the main center. And we're looking at as well revamping how we manage the special waste, so the e-waste, compact fluorescent bulbs, and things like that, to make that safer, smoother, easier, better user experience, and just better for our employees as well. So that is in the works for the next year or two as well. We are also beginning our permitting and design work on a new MRF. We've been talking a lot about the need for a new MRF. And in June and this month to my board, I'm bringing to them the basically the go, no go. So if the board approves this project for us to go forward, then we will be bringing that back to our communities in much more detail. You have a one-pager back and forth, front and back in your packet about the project. That is just, again, a brief overview with the board's approval. Then that kicks off the next round of education and information. We don't have the money in the bank to pay for a new MRF, so we would be looking to issue a municipal bond. And that does mean we need to come to our cities and towns and have residents vote on that bond. We would not be asking our cities and towns to pay for that bond. So we would be paying down that debt through a combination of revenue sources. So first, those user fees, the tip fees. If for some reason that wasn't enough to cover the bond, we would supplement that with the sales revenue from the material that we sort. If for some reason that's not enough, we would supplement that with the solid waste management fee revenue. But we don't anticipate having to go that deep. Again, more information will be coming that your way should we go get the go ahead for that project. We would be looking to bring the question to the voters in the November 2022 election. So the next general election is what we're looking to do for that. And lastly, I want to make sure that everyone is, I'm reminding people to of their community cleanup fund and to talk with your commissioner and to present projects to them to do in town. Every community has their own bit of money, and Williston is really pretty good about using their community cleanup funds. That does reset every July 1 and replenishes. So you would just, and the ideas can come from anywhere in the town, and you just talk to Kaylin, you would talk to your primary commissioner and put the project together, submit receipts, and we pay you back. So it's pretty easy. We want to get that money out to the community. So I know that was a very quick overview. So I would love to throw that out to any questions that you may have about our budget or about CSWD.
Good. Thanks very much for the overview. And I think Kaylin is on the line as well. And can you tell us whether you have looked at the budget and do you support it?
Yeah, thank you. So as you know, until just yesterday, Jeremy Halsey was the primary commissioner and he was really tied in, but he did give me an update and I attended the last board meeting and I do support the budget. I think always Sarah and CSWD are really fiscally responsible and thoughtful, and yeah, I fully support the budget.
Good, thank you. I'll open up to questions from the board regarding the budget. Questions? Jeff, you usually have questions regarding the solid waste district?
I do. I'm not as prepared as I usually am. I just got back traveling yesterday and picked up my packet today. So if there's any way in which I could defer, I did quickly go through it. I did have a couple minor questions. I mean, the fact that you're not increasing fees tremendously or a lot, says a lot right there. I'm on page E2 and I just wonder if this number is correct where it talks about the number of FTEs in the table on the top and it says 5.5 and that just seems really low.
So yes, so that is specific to the compost program.
Okay. The one, and I think you have a complicated budget. One of the things that's difficult, I mean, I have enough trouble getting through our town budget and I understand that one pretty well now. For me to get inside of your budget and really figure it out just is not really possible for me to do. I think you've tried to a degree to give us the main points, but if there could be a Reader's Digest version of the budget, that would be great. I think some of my questions are actually about the planned facilities, which Sarah and probably Kaylin, as you know, I have interest in, maybe a bias about, might be an accurate way to put that. And Sarah, I believe we are going to be talking sometime in the future about that. I didn't catch what you said about how you will pay down the bond. I don't necessarily, I think, the MRF probably does need to be replaced. The $18 to $20 million seems like it'd be in the ballpark for that type of a facility. I don't deal with MRFs, but I deal with wastewater and water treatment plants. And if there's any correlation there, that number doesn't seem unreasonable. But you mentioned how you would be paying those bonds and principal and interest on that. And I didn't catch that. I didn't understand it.
Yes, no, sorry. Thank you for asking the question again. So yes, so the lever that we would use would be the tip fee or the user fee. So that would be the fee that we charge to haulers who bring the recyclables to the facility for sorting. So what we would do is we would take a look at obviously all of the operating expenses. So what are the operating expenses? And the debt repayment would become an operating expense.
Yeah.
So we would add that in there. And we would say, okay, of the operating expenses, what is payable by the tip fee, keeping in mind that we do want to continue to remain competitive in the market. We can't charge $120 a ton if the market around us is charging 100 or 90. So we would take a look at our position relative to the other MRFs in the market. And when we talk about the other MRFs, we're talking about the Rutland MRF, the Casella runs, MRF in Albany, probably a couple of the MRFs in Massachusetts. Take a look at what we call our MRF shed. So like a watershed, there's a MRF shed. So we take a look at that. And we would have the understanding of what the operating costs are, plus the cost of the paying back the bond. And we would most likely do a 25-year bond. We can do 20, you can do a number up to 25. We would stretch it out as long as we can. And then adjust that tip fee accordingly. If that would put the tip fee out of market range, we would keep the tip fee within market range, and then we would fill in whatever is left with revenue from material sales. Right now, the revenue from material sales is generally goes into our MRF capital reserve. So with a newer MRF, you're not going to have need $1 million to fix the roof and the tip floor and the walls. And you're not going to be replacing a baler, for 10 years. So we'll have some space to be able to backfill and supplement the tip fee with material sales. So that would be where we would generate that bond payment back. I forgot to mention that we have also applied through Senator Leahy's office for an earmark. Granted, never guaranteed, but it hasn't happened in 10 or 12 years, so we couldn't let the opportunity pass. So we do have a preliminary application in for that. But again, the plan is for the municipal bond. We're not going to put the eggs in that basket. We'll put the eggs in the other basket.
Okay. Yeah, I heard earmarks are back. You mentioned the reserve, and right now it sounds like there's not a lot of money in the MRF reserve fund. And probably the reason is because you've been having to invest in just keeping the MRF going. Did I hear correctly, or am I misinterpreting what I heard?
So I don't know what you heard. But I
Okay.
can tell you what I know. So what we do now is we no longer have siloed reserve funds.
I
We have
read that
one
in your,
Yeah, we have one capital reserve. So what that makes us do is be very specific about longer term needs of the district. So we're no longer just saying, well, this is my little DOC money, that's my little MRF money, that's my. No, we look at all of the capital needs across the district, and then we prioritize. So because we had been prioritizing compost very soon, that will no longer need the capital, and then it shifts to other priorities. So we continue to do low-level capital work every year. There's work, whether it's some construction work or whether it's rolling stock or equipment, that is ongoing, but that's also planned and known. So for the larger projects, again, it's taking a look at just how I'm sure the fire department does the same thing, the police does the same thing. You take a look at, well, what's coming up for the next 5 years? What are we looking at 10? It's about how long I really want to go out. And then now where we're looking at capital and approaching capital is looking at it in its totality. And so if compost has a banner year, and there's no need to have money in a standalone compost capital reserve, it goes into the overall capital reserve. The MRF has been subsidizing all of the capital needs for years. So by doing that, it creates more of a pool that we can then meter out as needed. So in our capital reserve, we do have, and there is a standalone document on the capital reserve. But we are looking at a very heavy spend. So, if we were to do absolutely everything that we have on the list, we're looking at about $2.5 million. We do have that in the reserve. We have about $5 million in the reserve for capital. Over the next 5 years, we will be spending that down. So one thing I've also charged our board with, specifically our finance committee, is to look at our reserve policy to make sure that we are allocating the dollars properly across the different reserves, whether it's biosolids, operating, solid waste management fee, capital. Those are our main reserves. Closed landfill has its own, but that is separate and standalone. And just to make sure that we are properly funding those reserves as we go. Again, knowing that we've got certain projects coming out. Had we thought about it 10 years ago, we should have established a new MRF capital fund, and then just putting money in specifically for that until we got to a certain amount, whether it's 10 million or 12 or 15, whatever it might be, and said, this is what we're going to use specifically for this. That wasn't how we did things, 10, 20 years ago. So going forward, that's what we want to look at. And that's part of the reasons for making sure that none of the reserves are overfunded. For example, I think the solid waste management fee reserve is overfunded. So that money needs to be redirected, redistributed amongst the reserves so that we're having a better sense of where we may be lacking and what we might need to do and how we might need to adjust.
Okay. It sounds to me like what's going to happen when it comes times to bond, you're going to have to bond for essentially the whole cost of the MRF. You know, plus or minus maybe a little bit, but essentially that's okay, which is fine. That's a fine answer. I just would like to understand.
Yeah, there's a possibility of a zero interest municipal loan through a private funder. It's about $5 billion. So we would still need to bond for the remainder.
Wow.
But, you know, we are looking, shaking all the trees.
Yeah. Interesting. Do they do?
You know,
Okay.
that would be a hook.
Yeah, just interesting. Okay, I think that's it for me.
I'll move to approve the fiscal year 2021 Chittenden Solid Waste District budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion on the motion?
Hopefully this isn't a problem, but I'm going to abstain because I don't think I'm prepared enough to vote yes or no.
Thank you.
I'll just mention, Terry, I just, my mistake, there's a typo there. It should read fiscal year. Oh, that, my fault.
So the motion is to approve the fiscal year 22 budget. All those in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, 3. And Jeff, you're abstaining.
One abstention.
So we have positive vote, 3-0-1. So the next item on the agenda is the Oak Hill Estates water system discussion, and we're not going to be doing that tonight. One of the two presenters is unable to be here tonight to do that, so we'll move on and we'll reschedule that for another meeting. And we'll move on to the police dispatch staffing report, and we'll welcome on site Chief Foley and Lieutenant Moore. And Eric, if you'd like to start out a little bit.
Yep, I'll give a brief introduction and turn it over to our police. There's been some recent changes in the staffing level available Vermont state. This caused our department to re-examine additional options dispatching prior to a launch. One option staff has brought to my attention, and we're evaluating in the shorter term, adding a potential third dispatch position in. We're also evaluating there are additional viable options to throughout this. As we've talked about before, our longer term dispatch solution need to be a topic of discussion. Include in your agenda packet a memo from Lieutenant Moore that he'll walk through in more detail this evening. We've also included an analysis of our fund balance projection from Shirley, which she can address to the board. Go here. And in thinking about potentially adding a third dispatch position FY22, that's not in the budget. So if the town and the board were to decide to go that direction, the fund balance would have to be utilized to fund that operating expense in the just as we're taking a look at it, if that was appropriate for the financial plan. For the discussion this evening to be mainly informational, asking for feedback from the board on the option of adding a third dispatch position. The additional information requested it's time to a policy. No questions on the board. I'll turn to our police.
Hearing no questions at this point, gentlemen, take it away.
And good evening, and thank you for allowing us to attend this meeting this evening. We believe this is an issue that needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. I look at it as a liability issue. I will not, I'll have Lieutenant Moore speak about the specifics and then entertain questions from the board. about why we're going this direction. So without further ado, I'll go to this presentation.
A little bit different us coming in here, so thanks and welcome. I know that everybody was privy to Gary Taylor
January.
back in January. So this isn't a new topic. It's just that new situation. Going through this town now, you realize it's not your own farmland. Fortunately, we're up to staffing levels, so that's creating some hardship on our nighttime dispatch, which is Vermont State Police. So this all started on May 15th, just kind of out of the blue, when our on-duty supervisor at 7 in the morning got a call from the Vermont State Police, and it was one of their dispatch supervisors just saying, hey, we see you guys have 4 officers on, you don't have your dispatcher in at the time. When I said that, our in-house dispatch up front in the main office. We have a new directive that anytime there's more than 3 officers on at any given time, we're not going to be able to dispatch for you. That's what was relayed at the time. So our on-duty supervisor ended up having to take himself off duty. He stayed in the building in uniform, but was not technically available to a dispatcher for calls. So that way the staffing levels would stay at 3 under their new directive. This was a Saturday morning. Obviously, Chief and I both started getting phone calls throughout the day trying to figure out what's going to go on from here. So we started dealing with it Monday morning first thing. I reached out to Captain Lance Burnham, who's in charge of dispatching in this area. Had a conversation with him. He relayed to us that never ever would we not have dispatching services. So we would never have unanswered phone calls or have officers out on the road and not be able to have a dispatch line of communication. What was relayed to me was that they are pretty low on staffing. They are about as bare minimum as they can get. So when COVID first came about, due to restrictions occurring inside the dispatch center, they had to take what they call a rover dispatcher off. So here at the Williston PSAP, they'll dispatch for the St. Albans barracks, they'll do Williston barracks, they'll do the Middlesex barracks, and then a bunch of little municipalities all around. They used to have a rover position, which would then fill in for those dispatchers for break times, busy times, whatnot. They took that position away. They planned on, once going back to normal operating levels, that they would put that position back in. But recently they've lost a significant number of dispatchers, and now they can't even get to that level of staffing. And I was advised that getting back to the 2019 staffing levels in that PSAP is probably going to be 2 years out. So we kind of find ourselves in a situation here now where we rely on the state police for more hours of dispatching than we actually provide ourselves in-house. So we are putting a pretty significant burden on them. Like I said, this town during the daytime hours, Monday through Friday, and it's starting on the weekends, our phone lines are ringing constantly. It's for calls for service, it's for informational type situations, but it's getting busier and busier, and the more businesses that come in here, it just keeps increasing. So we're finding ourselves at a situation here where we need to come up with not a fix-all solution, but something fairly immediately to try to help the state police with this burden. Without looking at actual numbers, I would say that we're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest agency that relies on the state police dispatching in the state. Call-wise, I can tell you, I ran some numbers a couple Fridays ago. The Williston State Police, their officers, so the troopers that work out of the Williston State Police Barracks, they also include the Lamoille County area. So there's some troops that are stationed in that outpost. The town of Williston, so our officers are almost 700 calls ahead of that Williston State Police Barracks, who we are relying on for our dispatching. So that's just kind of a statistic out there, just showing that the men and women here in Williston are busy. And that's not even including traffic stops and other things that are not documented as cases. going forward, once we enter into a new system for RMS, that will change. So then it's all going to be case driven. So those case numbers will go higher. So we were fully staffed. We should be here shortly again and for officers. So that's 17 total to include the chief and I. If we were to look at that new 3 officer on directive, I can tell you at this exact moment that we're at 5. So there's 3 officers out on the road, and then the chief and I are actually on duty right now. You know, we're here, but for the dispatchers looking at their screen, we're included. So we have 5 on. I've relayed to the captain, and I know the chief has also relayed to their higher ups that we're working on trying to come up with some solution here to help them out. And that's kind of what brings us here tonight. So I did prepare this. I don't want to go word for word, but I can definitely answer any of the questions. I tried to include our current dispatching schedule on here. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we have dispatchers in the front of the building. On the weekends, it's down to 10 hours on a Saturday, 10 on a Sunday. But that's only 2 dispatchers. So we have 2 dispatchers. One of the dispatchers may call out sick. One has vacation time. If the other one can't fill, then we're starting going to state police. If it's a pre-planned vacation or time off, sometimes we can get some help from our part-time dispatchers, but they're all full-time dispatchers in other agencies, so it's kind of at the will of their schedule. If it's an early morning where a dispatcher calls out sick and we can't get the other dispatcher in right away, we run into this problem. During the Monday through Friday, especially during the end of the week, we'll have, currently as it stands today, we'll have 5 officers to include Officer Cohen with Duke and the chief and I, so that's 7. Coupled with this time of the year, we're starting to run into the really busy construction season. So we're getting calls from every construction agency that's working in this area to include all of Chittenden County. So we're sending officers to wherever they need to be for private duties to try to help these agencies cover these. The state of Vermont has a policy that they try to abide by when it comes to construction. If it's on a state highway, they tell you how many officers need to be in there. And there's one going over in the Colchester area where I know that the sheriff's department is having us a system because they're asking for 4 to 6 officers a night. So I know in the next couple of nights we'll have officers over there. So that kind of throws off our staffing levels when it comes to the state police directive. Chief and I looked at where we stand today, what our busy hours are here, and the proposal that we believe would probably be the most beneficial to help alleviate these issues today, the quick fix, not the fix all, but kind of the quick fix, would try to add this 3rd dispatch position. Our proposal would be to, by looking at the different call volume and the data that we have, would be to flip this person onto a, I say evening, but more of a night shift schedule. It could be a little bit flexible in regards to, you know, maybe 4 10-hour shifts or 5 8-hour shifts as we go forward, just kind of seeing what the call volume may be. Obviously, the early mornings in this town is usually our quieter times, but that doesn't mean we have less officers on. It just may be less calls for service. So that maybe that 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. time frame is a little bit quieter. Usually those Sundays and Sunday nights are the quieter days. And then it's kind of sporadic because we really just don't know what we're going to have going forward. It could be a quiet Monday. It could be an extremely busy Monday. You just don't really know. But typically our Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings into nights are usually our busier nights. And sometimes they're even busier than the day shifts. It really just depends on what's going on. And you know, the summertime come here, it is going to pick up with people coming back out in the restaurants and stuff opening up in the bars out of town. Our call volume is going to start getting extremely high during those summer months. But with thinking about that, just remember in 2020 there wasn't much movement, so our call volume may be skewed a little bit, especially because we were light on staffing at the end of 19ish and started building up, and now we're, as of right now with the chief and I, we're at 16, and like I said, hopefully in the next month or so we'll have that 17th position filled again. And obviously the more officers out on the road, there's more proactive patrols going on, and our call volume will go up because of that. And then just at the very end, I did break it down, what it would kind of look like. So where we currently stand for the call volume structure, let's just call one of the dispatchers shift A and the other shift B. The reason is there's two, it says Sunday to Wednesday and then Wednesday to Saturdays. The dispatchers switch after 6 hours on that Wednesday. So one will come in from 7 to 1 in the afternoon and then 1 to 7 p.m. So that's kind of their flop day. And then currently what VSP is doing for us. And then the second graph or chart that I did there is what this may look like with the new shift. So if we were to add a third position in the dispatch area, what that new shift would be. Like I said, for a while there on one of the night shifts, we were only running 2 officers. So some of the numbers may be skewed because the call volume was down, the officers were working and some weren't. We're short staffed, and usually if we are short staffed, we'll go shorter on nights versus days because the call volume is usually higher on days. So that's kind of a quick overview of the memo that I did up, just to kind of put the bug in everybody's ear of where we're at. In short term, this is kind of our solution, especially if we want to continue to be good neighbors with VSP, because there are going to be times that we're going to, even if we went with a third position, we still are going to rely on them to help us out, because we're not 24/7 here at the department.
So the request really is for one permanent position going forward.
Correct.
So, yeah.
It's the simplest fix right now. There's a lot of moving parts here. We got the regional we're invested in, but we don't want to get another phone call on a Saturday morning saying, stick Joe officer on the desk and they're not certified, and that becomes a serious problem for us. Sure. So again, this buys us time. It'll be a flexible schedule with this person. So as our demands, we can move them around or move her around to cover, certain nights that, we can rely on just 2 officers on the shift, the beginning of the week. But, at the end of the week where the demands are greater, it solves our problem right now. It makes VSP happy. Again, we're an unknown with them because they're talking about charging us for dispatching. Yes. So again, it seems like evidence like caving in on the Williston PD's dispatch. So we want this fixed as possible, and I think it'll buy us a lot of time with that extra full-time position.
And I don't think that a lot of people understand how busy a dispatcher inside of a PSAP can actually get. So when we're talking about numbers here, it really doesn't show a lot. So say that we have 7 officers on, and there are during a day shift, and we have to turn the phones over to the state police, and the state police have, with detectives on, they have 8 to 10 between the 2 counties, and then they also take on the town of Richmond, and then they also take on Department of Motor Vehicle inspectors that may be in the area. One dispatcher could be answering phone calls and dispatching for 3 different agencies and 20 to 25 officers, and that's just too much, especially in Chittenden County. It's just too busy for that dispatcher.
So let's ask the board if they have questions regarding the proposal, and we can talk about how to pay for it.
Well, an immediate question is when and how much?
So the when would be
when you voted
as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay, and then there's also the question of how much. And then my corresponding other question is, thanks for all this information and pretty clear proposal. If I don't understand how dispatch works, because right now you have two people filling a lot of shifts. And now we're going to be filling more shifts with just one more person. Is one person really enough, or do you really need two dispatchers, new additional dispatchers?
Well, I think one works right now, because it's a serious concern that we need to fill. We have some gaps there that we need by adding this, with everything else going around in Chittenden County, the discussion about the regional dispatch, I've always advocated our own dispatch here in Williston. I think we could fund it and make it work and encompass the fire department to join us. But that's a discussion down the road. Our immediate concern is right now is that, tomorrow morning, the day shift is, 3 officers, and we add a K9, that's the 4th. Josh and I, now we're up to 6. If our day dispatcher calls out sick tomorrow and I can't fill it, we're in problems. We have 3 part-time dispatchers, 2 are full-time employees in other agencies, and 1's a part-time employee but a student in a college. So again, we're limited to that, and we just can't take the officer off the road and say, sit on the desk and answer the phone. It doesn't work that way. 40 years ago when I began, you could do that. But with all the liabilities out there, all the regulations that we have to follow, we both, Josh and I, Lieutenant and I, both agreed that adding that one extra body right now fixes an immediate concern we have that will cover the important shifts. And then maybe reach out and try to recruit a few more part-timers that pick up the slack. But I think this is the quickest fix we get. And then down the road is that have the discussion along with the regional dispatch and see what else way we should go. Yeah, I think the thing is that the dispatch center is the core of any organization, no matter what it's police, fire, EMS, public works, they run the operation. So when you call here or call 911, you want a person there that knows what they're doing. And the town manager asked last week about like multiple calls, you triage them. What is the most important call, and you deal with that, tell the other people, hang on, we'll get to you as soon as possible. But if the phone rings 911, there's nobody in the seat in Williston PD, then we got problems.
Yeah, Jeff, and I know that you asked, do you really need 2? I can tell you that Essex Police Department, they run 4 full-time dispatchers, but they have a healthy pile of part-time dispatchers that basically pick up their weekends, is how they operate.
I meant to ask the question, and not that I necessarily agree yet, but should there be 2 new dispatchers, not why are you using 2 right now? Just I want to make sure I'm clear. This turns the question around the other way. We are working, and not that it's going to affect my decision, I just want to know what the potential impact is. And that is, we are talking about how should Williston provide dispatch services? Should we do it through a regional program? Should we do it through our own? Should we continue with what we're currently doing? And that's an unanswered question. How does that affect our ability to hire or bring on a qualified dispatcher if part of what we're telling them is come join Williston, but we don't know how long this position will be here for you?
Just be honest. We just hired one, Ashley, not too long ago. She's been with us a little over a month, and that we had that conversation before she accepted the position. I don't think there's any other way to go about it other than just being honest with the individual about it.
Well, good brief, excellent answer. Thank you. Then my only other question actually is for Eric. This has come up in a different situation or different whatever, situation, maybe that's a good way to put it. And I just want to make sure that because we have a budget we're in right now, budget year that we're in right now that the voters approved. We're heading into a budget year on July 1st, also that the voters have approved, do we have the ability to add a new position? And if we're this far in the discussion, the answer has to be yes, but I just still want to make sure I understand.
Yes, we do, Jeff, and I'll have Shirley speak to the financial piece of it a bit. We've researched this quite a bit, and
Okay.
Certainly we'll look at the fund balance, but understanding if we're having an operating function, we necessarily don't know where we're going to end up at the end of the year. So we could have some savings in the police department that end up paying for a good chunk of this expense, but if we need to have additional funds, the fund balance, it would be a question for the board to allocate for that purpose if it came to that point. But up front, we want to have certainly the board's authority would be to add the position, and understanding that it may rely on some fund balance. But the board's also making necessarily what could be a commitment for the FY23 budget, not knowing what our horizon is for a longer term alternative.
And absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up. This is not a 1 year type thing. This is a permanent, until we decide what to do with dispatch decision.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the camera to see you, and I'm trying to address the full board here. But thinking about regional dispatch moving ahead too, it's certainly something we're continuing to look at. I serve on the CCPSA board. There aren't any significant updates to bring right now. The board is working to try to obtain additional funding for capital investment to stand up the organization. If I could come here tonight saying there was a definite timeline and a potential bridge solution right now, I wish I could, but I spoke to our department about this. It's trying to understand what options may exist and also what we can control to meet a service need in the short term. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. And Shirley will probably address what this likely will mean in terms of cost.
Yep.
Okay.
We can,
right.
Terry, when the board's right, we can have Shirley.
So once we're through asking questions of the chief and the lieutenant, then we can switch to Shirley. Other questions?
Yeah, just a sense of timing for, getting someone through application process, onboarding, any Williston specific training. Obviously, you just went through this very recently, so you probably have a pretty good idea of what that might look like.
Yeah, we do. We've already field calls from people interested, knowing that, word of mouth, we're looking at adding, so we're kind of set there. We would ask somebody who's full-time certified and trained. We got, people coming in to start using their vacation time. After a year of being locked down and not going anyplace, people want to get out of here and doing that. So we're trying to be as quick as possible, but also as responsible as possible, because we want to make sure the person that we have, like we were talking about, understand that, this could be a 1 year position, and then, we see what's with the regional dispatch, or, something else comes up, and so again, we want to make sure we have somebody who understands that this might not be a permanent position, but it's a position that's going to help us out in the early times. But, it's just like the patrol side, we've gotten calls from people from other agencies, and, that they want to come to here. They see Williston as probably the shining spot right now in the growth. So we offer a lot of possibilities to them. So we see what happens, but the sooner we can get that extra position filled, then it makes me a lot happier that I'm not getting a call at 6 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night that, we have a problem because we can't put anybody on the desk and nobody wants to dispatch for us. But we have other plans out there that, emergency situation, but I don't want to use that right now unless we really have to. So by adding a new position, it might be just a temporary position, but it's going to correct all our needs. I'm confident what, Lieutenant has put together, that it will meet demands that has affected our relationship with VSP, and it lessens their burden on us. For quite a few years, we only had one dispatcher, and the former town manager, Rick McGuire, talked about then they had to add a second dispatcher because, the demands of our calls for services have increased, and now, even with the pandemic, our calls for services have gone up. So we're growing. You look around this town, it's not going down. And, we have a lot of traffic to come through this town. Tonight, within an hour, we had two major accidents, both ends of the town. So, you know, you're going. It's not the quiet Williston that I remember 45 years ago when I used to be going over to Bolton, coming through Route 2, so.
Yeah, and in some of the numbers that I was running, I was just kind of playing around with data from the last few years, and we're kind of on that trajectory of about a 10% increase in calls per year. And that was fairly steady. I actually think that it's probably going to go a little bit higher than that when we get back to normal. So this year and next year, just because our officer levels are holding stronger, they're holding higher. So you're going to start seeing a little bit more in that. So I think that's just kind of the trend that we're going in, and the more businesses and residential areas that we have in town, that's just going to go even higher. So.
Other questions before we go to finances? Not
Just
sure how
one
you're
quick
doing
one.
this. Are you switching up to the table, Shirley, or, okay?
Yeah,
Does Jeff
So
have
we
any
can
more?
put you guys on hold and over in the waiting area?
Terry, I think
Oh, Jeff?
question.
Yeah, just one thing I was reading on page 3, just before we get to the proposal and the memo that was given to us, it talks about the highway traffic safety grants as well as private road construction details. And it's not at all a disagreement or anything, but I'd just like to know more about that.
So very quickly, I can do it pretty quick. The private road construction details. So currently down Williston Road and Industrial, where the state's doing their big project, starting up here, once they actually start, digging here, they want at least one officer Monday through Friday down there at all times. So they'll hire us. It's built into the state budgets. Usually, depending on the size of the contracts, it's like 2% of the total cost of that project is for police assistance. The town doesn't pay anything. The construction companies pay that full freight. So they pay for the use of the vehicle, the blue lights, the fuel, the officer, and all of their benefits that go along with those hours worked. Charlie can talk more about that because she's really good at that. And then the federal grant details. So there's a lieutenant over at the Chittenden County Sheriff's Office who is the grant man for that. What he does is he runs that entire grant. So when you see, we call them sharp. So those are like DUI details at night where, basically you go to certain areas that are picked. What the grant has actually been doing, though, because there's been low turnout in other areas because of just lack of staffing throughout the whole area, is the police department's actually allotted a certain amount of hours per month for our officers to go out in our own community and patrol our town on grant money, which in the grand scheme of things is only a benefit to the town because it's an increased presence. It's based on safety concerns, so traffic accidents. So you sit at intersections, distracted driving, which is like talking on your cell phone. And currently, right now, we're allotted 150 hours a month, and that's broken up evenly between all the officers. And I don't want to say it's a free for all, but it's more of on their own time when they're not on shift. They come in. They don't really have to give us permission as long as there's enough vehicles for them to use, and they're just an extra officer on the road concentrating on traffic safety, but at the same time they are available to assist on calls. So there are a lot of hours that are for that.
And the other issue is that we can fund a dispatcher to cover those shifts that are out there, but unfortunately we don't have the dispatchers to do it. So if they came in tonight at 7 o'clock and they're working to midnight, they're part of the state police, and it means that they probably wouldn't be out there because the state police probably would tell us bring our own dispatcher. And so what we're telling these officers working the shop details is that make sure that you're going to do the operation
he was talking about. So the fee that we charge to the vendor, as Josh said, it covers the cost, all of our benefits, and we actually have included an admin percentage in there to cover like my time to do the accounting, Lynn's time to run payroll, Mary's time to invoice the companies, so that the taxpayer is not absorbing any cost of that additional work that PD is taking on. So there's one question for you.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. The next question you asked was how much would it cost to staff the position? So I just did an analysis for, an individual who was either insurance benefits drive a larger cost than most of the other benefits and retirement. So I just costed out a person who was single, a 2-person plan, and a family plan. So the cost is anywhere from 74,000 to just under 91,000, depending what the employee's needs are that is hired. So, we're looking at an average of like 82,000, 83,000 for the cost of a new dispatcher.
Okay.
You good with that one?
Yep.
Okay. So with that,
Okay.
you good with that one?
Yep.
Okay. So with that covered, now we're going to talk about how we pay for that. So you have this memo called estimated fund balance, and I'll try to be quick, but I also want to make sure you follow the logic. So every year we're always talking about how much fund balance do we have available and how's that work within our fund balance policy. So what I did with this memo was I started with the unassigned fund balance from the audited financial statements. So what that means is when I say unassigned fund balance, it's the fund balance that's available for anything that either comes through the budget or the select board chooses they can assign some of that to a specific use. And then we have what we call the assigned fund balance. And that typically in the financial statements is made up of a couple things. The dollars that we are setting aside in the next budget year for tax reduction, or the fund balance that we are setting aside in the next budget year for capital projects. So that's, you assign it, and in the financial statements, it's shown as assigned in the end of the previous year. So as we look at this memo, we're starting with the unassigned fund balance as of the audit. I'm adding the revenue forecast from the last forecast from last meeting in, so that's our revenue. But then I turned around and I reduced the revenue projection by the amount that we had, the 500,000 for tax reduction, because I really wanted to see what the unassigned fund balance would look like without even considering that, and whether we were going to need any of it. And then I subtracted out the budgeted, or I should say, budgeted FY21 expenses. And then I added back the savings that we expect from those expenses. So best guess estimated June 30th, 2021, estimated fund balance is the 2,882,717 you see. So the next section, I'm just talking about that difference between the assigned and unassigned fund balance. So the assigned fund balance for the general fund at the end of last year was $780,810, and that's broken down by those two pieces: assigned for property taxes and for capital projects. So when we look at the FY22 budget, there are 4 different pieces of that assigned fund balance as laid out in the memo: for tax reduction, for capital projects, for capital equipment, and for the CCPSA. So that's a total of 856,000. So I'm going to say that difference is an increase in about 76,000 of the assigned fund balance. So I'm going back to that 282,000 number, subtracting out that increase in the assigned fund balance to say, okay, here's what we project where we'll be at 6/30/21 for our unassigned fund balance, and that's 2.8 million and change. So the next piece I wanted to walk through was our fund balance policy, and we have that 10% floor that's based on the next year's operating budget, so that's FY22, and we have the 20% ceiling. So if you're comparing the 2.8 million to the 10% floor was the 1,157,000, and to the 20% ceiling is the 2,314,000. So you can see that our fund balance is still plenty healthy, or our projected fund balance is really healthy, and we're going to be above the ceiling. So we have about $493,000 above that ceiling calculation. So that's where we're getting the funding for this position, for the dispatch position, is from that fund balance.
I guess I would just add, Shirley, that we won't know where we are throughout the budget year, so we could end up having reduced expenses in other areas of the budget, so we may or may not need to use that full fund balance,
Right.
depending where expenses landed in the general fund.
Exactly.
So questions for Shirley?
Shirley, Jeff here. As you know, I'm an engineer, not a finance person. So could I just restate what I heard and see if you agree with it? And the restatement is the fund balance appears to be very healthy and is more than adequate to fund a third dispatcher's position.
Great summary, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Shirley? So staff is looking for feedback, not necessarily a decision tonight, but I guess the question is there any objections to proceeding down this road looking at a third dispatcher?
No objection from me.
So I don't see any objections to it, so that's good, and we'll continue to hear more about this in the near future.
Great.
So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and sharing the good news and the bad news.
Yeah. And a well done
Thank you.
proposal.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we're on to the fire station roof project, and this is Eric and Shirley, I believe, on this one as well.
And I can, part of this was kind of teed up with the fund balance discussion, but try to be brief. I've got a memo and an update in your packet as well. But you might recall, we have in the capital plan for this coming fiscal year a replacement of the fire station roof project. The department sought bids recently, and there was one response from Bannister Custom Exteriors. The bid price was about $126,000. We had estimated after discussions during the budget process for about $100,000 cost for this project after consultations last winter. Likely as similar we saw with the Muddy Brook Bridge project, the scarcity of contractors and price changes are likely driving the increased cost here. Rising costs of materials is anticipated to continue in the coming years. We'll be transitioning this roof to a standing seam metal construction. Our staff recommendation is to proceed with this project using Bannister Custom Exteriors. Waiting another year will likely increase the project cost and the risk to the damage to the building that could result by waiting to add additional expenses moving ahead. References for this one contractor were all very positive, the fire department reports. So you might recall our initial recommendation to pay for this during the budget process was to consider short-term borrowing. And as we've looked at where some of our expenses are going to be for FY22, we see what we believe is a better solution to look at this evening. There's a memo for me in the agenda that summarizes funds in the FY22 budget that are no longer going to be needed for debt service due to a recent change in bond payment timing. So we went to bond sale in early March for the fire truck bond. And when we put the budget together, we anticipated we would have a principal bond payment coming up in FY22. But as a result of the bond sale, that payment's not going to be due till FY23. So we have some funding in the budget, about $99,000 that we could use just towards the roof project now. We had put some money in to pay down a short-term note on the roof. There's the principal payment we don't need to make for the fire truck, and the interest payment we do need to make for the fire truck isn't as high as we budgeted. So this option allows us to use cash on hand in the budget that we have. That is an expense we won't need in FY22 to use for this purpose. But as you can see, the bid came in a little bit higher. So what staff is asking the board to consider this evening is to authorize using a portion of the unassigned fund balance that Shirley just summarized to cover the full cost of this project. Our recommendation is it was about 126,000, but it's unknown where the price of metal is going to be when they go to construction. So we're trying to build in about a 5% a contingency for that. So the motion that staff has put forward for the board to consider this evening builds in that extra 5%, asking for about $32,000 from the fund balance to be assigned towards this
Thanks, Eric. Any questions for Eric regarding the proposal?
Eric, how old is the roof?
I believe it is 14 years when the building was constructed.
And that's shingles, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's no kind of warranty of any kind that was by the original construction?
We checked into that. And looking at
curious
at the options. Yeah, certainly we wanted to see if that was something we could pursue, but
that's not a long time, and I know. But I had to ask the question.
Yeah. It's certainly one of the first things we took a look at. And this looking for a standing seam metal roof, we believe this will last.
Oh no, longevity wise, I would certainly agree. I just to
take care of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Eric, Jeff here, I'm not at all opposed. I am a bit surprised by it sounds like the bid came in, but it isn't a firm bid because we had to add that 5% contingency to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a provision in the bid talking about what the price of materials are going to be. And I've discussed this with the chief when if we choose to move ahead, if we could, when we get a contract together, kind of put a firm parameter on that. So it's not just kind of an open escalation cost, that we can understand what our maximum liability is going to be, because we don't know. I know the price of metal, like all commodities right now, is changing on a daily basis.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard where somebody's actually said, here's what I'll agree to, but it's, there's some float in it because I don't know what my costs exactly are going to be. So I'm not willing to commit to a firm price to you. But that's what it is. That's what it is. And we have to deal with it, I guess.
Yeah. We're hoping we can put some guardrails in to just understand what our liability is going to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Eric regarding this?
I was going to mention
Shirley?
one thing I didn't include in the fund balance analysis because I don't have the calculation done yet, but with the ARPA money that we're getting, we can go back and calculate our lost revenue. And so Eric and I were talking about, we do that calculation and that money would actually just flow into the fund balance. So that will go into the fund balance.
Yeah.
There's a nice complicated formula that the federal government has put together for us to take a look at.
Of course. Any other questions? I'm looking for someone to make a motion.
Before a motion, I'm going to go back. I don't want to be stuck, but I just want to look at, I know metal is a longevity for sure. Are we getting any warranty on this one on how long that will be? And if so, what is it? Because you go back to the other one, you think about shingles, and I've done a lot of jobs myself, and they have 20 year, 30 year, 40 year shingles, and 14 years doesn't sound like a lot to me. So I don't know if you know that answer or not. I would ask the question.
We have the chief on, and he's been working with the vendor a little bit closer. I could see if the chief knows the answer to that. I know it's come up. Hey, Chief, I see you there. I'm gonna connect you. Hold on just a moment.
Welcome, Chief Collette. You're on a question for the fire station roof project. I'm not sure if you heard it or not.
I did hear it, and I was trying to drop back to get my VPN to work, and I wasn't quick enough to get that. But we certainly did include that, and I believe it's I know that it's a lifetime warranty on the metal roof. The difference is the paint warranty on the metal, I believe, is either a 25 or I think it's a 50-year paint warranty. but I'm not 100%. I can get back to you, but it is lifetime on the metal roof.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for either Eric or the chief? Hearing none, I'm still looking for a motion.
I'll move to designate up to $32,000 from the unassigned fund balance for the fire station roof replacement project in fiscal year 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Okay, we have 4 ayes on this one. And we'll move on then to the user fee and charges scheduled for fiscal year 2022. We approved the budgets for water, sewer, and stormwater at our last meeting, and the request is now to implement the charges to implement the budget. And we have Bruce Hoare on the, well, I think we do. We will have shortly, if not yet.
Yep. Bruce is here. I'll connect him. And then we have Chief Collette as well. He has some ambulance and department fee recommendations as well. We'll get Bruce connected right now. I don't know if Bruce's dog will make an appearance.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him for a while, so who knows?
So if you could just give us a brief description of your on the memo that you wrote regarding the 3 budget requests.
Okay, this is that time of year again to set the rates. These rates were shown in the budgets that were approved. The increase for the water rate is going to $5.10 per 1,000 gallons. That's a 1.39% increase. Sewer rate going to $7.49 a gallon, per 1,000 gallon. I'm sorry, and that's from $7.12 per 1,000. And that increase is a $5.20%. Basic user charges are being increased based on the CPI of 1.40. Residential water would be $5.82 per quarter. Commercial water would be $11.65 per quarter. And the sewer rate, basic user charge, increases to $16.01 per quarter. And glad to say the stormwater rate is staying at $4.25 per ERU for this year again. So that's, I think we're on our 6th year of the stormwater utility. So we haven't raised that since we started.
Thank you, Bruce. Any questions for Bruce on the proposals?
Really, the only question I have, and I think I know the answer, but I'm still going to ask it, is we really don't have a choice here. We have to charge these rates to meet the budget.
That's what the budget was approved on these rates, yes.
Yep, okay.
Any other questions for Bruce before we move on to Chief Collette and his request?
There is, I'm sorry, there's also the connection fees for water and sewer that are increasing, but they're increasing based on the CPI, which is what we've been doing every year for those rates. So residential water is going to be $7.19 times the number of gallons. Sewer will be $8.17 times the number of gallons, and that's the same whether it's residential or commercial. And then there's affordable housing, which is $3.59 times the number of gallons for water, and $4.10 times the number of gallons for sewer. Once again, all based on just increased by the CPI 1.40%.
Thanks, Bruce. Any questions for Bruce on that? I don't hear any, so let's move on to the request from the fire department and Chief Collette.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So the fire department took on a project in 2020 where we reached out to neighboring EMS agencies to poll what their ambulance assessment fees were for different services. And so we polled 7 of our neighboring ambulances to see if our fees were in alignment with what was going on. And so what we found is that the average fees for the neighboring communities, we were under that in some areas. We also found that those other agencies actually do a la carte options where they would bill individually for like an IV start or cardiac monitoring or oxygen application, which Williston Fire is not advocating for. We never have done that. We're not asking to do that. But so we found that we were even low on that. So we've just asked to bump up some of our service level fees for our different healthcare common procedural coding system service levels. So we would move our BLS non-emergent charge from $575. We'd increase it by $25 per call to a new charge of $600. The BLS emergency rate would go from a current charge of $700 to $750. Then current average for the 7 agencies we polled is just shy of $770. So we're still $20 shy of the average. The ALS 1 non-emergency rate, we currently charge $725. We're asking to increase that by $25 per transport to $750, which is several $100s less than other agencies, but not all agencies actually charge for that rate. The ALS 1 emergency rate, we're currently at $900. We're asking to increase that by $50 to $950. The ALS 2 emergency, which is like a paramedic level intervention or something more dramatic, we're not proposing to change that at this time. It's currently $12.95, and I think it's such an infrequent call for us. It doesn't make sense to try to increase that rate. The current mileage rate, we charge $18 per loaded mile. Then we found that the average in the area was 19, so we're asking to increase it by $1 to that $19 per loaded mile. And we're not proposing any changes to the AEMT or paramedic intercept, which are both fixed at $250 today, so that we're not looking for any changes there. The other changes that we recommended is currently we have set fees for vehicles, and they're listed out there on your fee schedule, such as a UTV with truck and trailer. Currently, the rate is listed as $90 per diem, meaning a day, but there's no definition of what a day is. So do I get $90 for a 2-hour detail, or do I get $90 for a 24-hour detail? And so when I look at all of the way that we actually charge these fees now, my recommendation to the town manager and to you folks is that we actually look to a uniform method of fees. And what I'd like to do is adopt the FEMA rate schedule for vehicles and equipment, which is already listed. And then we would just then have some sort of an industry standard by which to use reference. So when things that could work out in our favor is if we were to charge for any vehicles in a natural disaster, we would already have adopted the FEMA rate schedule. So current and that prospective rate. So we would already be following the FEMA rate schedule. Right now, we don't have any guidance on it. And so I'm looking to adopt that level of guidance. The standby rate for EMTs currently is set at $50. And you heard Shirley talk a little bit earlier about increased cost for that and administrative costs. We're looking to increase that to $60 per hour. So as an example, the UTV truck and trailer rate that we spoke of earlier, which we had at $90 per day. We'd actually look to move that from a per day cost, adopt the FEMA rate cost. That would come out to $40.64 per hour, and then we bill actual hours. So this is really tries to set a uniform policy for us for billing. It allows us to capture vehicles or equipment that we may not think of listing because it wasn't something we had ever envisioned that we would need, but to actually look for reimbursement for. But if we adopted this method through the FEMA system, then we could quickly reference it, that most current widget, if you will, a chainsaw, an aerial ladder, a fire engine, and we would have an industry standard rate and we would know what that is. So we had some validation behind our decision.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief on the proposal from the fire department?
Chief Jeff here.
Hi,
My
Jeff.
question, how are you? My question about the proposed ambulance rates. My understanding is even these rates don't reimburse the department for the full cost of running an ambulance. So it'd be helpful for me to understand what is your philosophy about what rates Williston should charge and how much of that full cost should the department be able to recoup through the rates it's charging? Does that make sense, that question?
It does, you know, and I tried to discover that by reaching out to our billing agent, Jeff, to have a better idea of it, to see, because we're really fixed by the Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement rates.
Okay.
So Medicare will reimburse only at 80% of their allowable, and Medicaid will reimburse on their fixed amounts. So while we could set a rate today for any one of these services that I've listed to you, Medicare and Medicaid have fixed amounts. So we'll never be able to recoup actual costs. We'll always be behind.
Yeah.
I look back at fiscal year 20, and just as an example, the adjustments were close to 42% that we had to make for the differences between what we billed and what Medicaid and Medicare would allow.
Okay. So the concept really is to be consistent with what our neighboring departments are doing. And that's about
Correct.
the best we can do, if you will. And I don't necessarily believe we should recoup all that funding back. Or stated differently, running an ambulance is a cost to the community, but the benefit of having that obviously outweighs, the cost.
Yeah. And some part of that, Jeff, is why we won't pursue the a la carte individual fees for oxygen and all of that. I agree with you. Right? We have a duty to our public.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll try to recoup what we can, but sometimes, we're going to have to eat that cost as the cost of the service.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's helpful.
Any further questions for the chief? The motion that is being before you, or which hopefully will be before you, covers both the user fees and the charges from the town departments as well as the fire department. You're looking for a motion.
I'll move to adopt the municipal user fee and charges schedule for fiscal year 2022 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 4 ayes, and that takes care of that. We're now on to the permit fee schedule for fiscal year 2022, and Matt Belanger will be joining us remotely to discuss this.
Yep, Matt should be connected. Yep, there he is.
I see. Hello, Matt.
Good evening.
So we're up to the permit fee schedule. If you could just briefly go over that with us.
Sure. So you've received a memo from me outlining the proposed changes for fiscal 22. Changes related to our administrative certificates. These are our certificate of compliance inspection certificates, are not actual monetary changes, just changes in the way we describe them. So the fees aren't changing, but what happens with our certificates of compliance is the base fee is actually paid at the time that someone applies for a permit. But we get requests for either extensions, additional site visits because we go out and find that something's not in compliance with permit conditions and know that we're going to need to return, or requests for rush inspections where someone is requesting an inspection fewer than 4 days in advance and they've got a closing coming up and they really need to get us out there. And we often have to push something else off on our schedule to go do that. Driving out there, usually hoping we don't find anything that's going to cause us to say no and really disappoint our applicant. So it's just breaking out those additional fees and making it clear what they are, because that's how they're actually paid, rather than it looking like a more expensive certificate. You paid with the permit, then you can pay the extra fee if you'd like to have the rush inspection. There are two fees on here that we're identifying as new. The first is related to file research to be performed by staff. This is a really infrequent request that we get. It usually comes when a property is changing hands and a permit research firm from somewhere not in Vermont files what they will call a Freedom of Information Act request, or sort of a kitchen sink request. You know, give me everything you've got about such and such property. And most of what we do with a request like that is we summarize what we have by looking in the file briefly, and encourage the requester to send a local title searcher in if they'd like to have a hard look through the file. Occasionally, what we get back is someone who says, no, I really want you to do it for me. Having that debate with somebody more than 25 minutes, we might as well just agree to do it, but agree to do it with a written estimate for our costs. And so statute does allow municipalities to charge for the performing of file research. We would propose to follow that. The proposal is if we go over a half hour, it's $25 an hour. That's below the lowest billing rate of the the lowest paid staff member in the office. So we're not trying to recapture the whole thing, just be able to estimate a reasonable fee, particularly if somebody said, give me everything you have on Maple Tree Place, or please perform a thorough examination of the Maple Tree Place files and tell me if this one piece of paper is there or not. So we'd just like to be able to respond to that sort of a request with a reasonable estimate of what we think it's going to take us to do, and say, are you sure you want to have us do it, or would you, like to reach out to somebody local and they can probably do it for less. So about twice a year, we would like to be able to respond with that. The other fee and lengthy note is related to specific plan. Specific plan is something that comes up fairly infrequently. Some select board members might remember that this was a process used in the addition of an allowed use to the former Pine Ridge property for the New England Theological Seminary. NETS. We currently have a specific plan application underway for NECS, New England Chimney Supply, off of Commerce Street, proposing to change some zoning boundaries. And we are finding that done carefully and thoroughly, as anticipated by the bylaw and the statement on shared costs, there's a fair amount of staff work involved in a specific plan. On and off, there's been a $1,000 fee identified on the fee sheet, but it's used so infrequently that it actually wasn't stated on the sheet anymore the last time we went to look for it. More importantly, we did find records that allowed us to charge it for the pending one. But more importantly is some of the language in that statement of cost sharing, that, you know, a specific plan is an undertaking in which the town may wish to retain expert testimony or independent oversight of testimony given by experts presented by the applicant on a number of issues. And that the intent of specific plan is for that to happen at the applicant's expense, similar to someone who pays engineering fees for oversight when they're adding a piece of public infrastructure through the public works review system. So with the particular specific plan we're reviewing right now, the applicant is preparing a sound study to look at noise that might come with an expanded industrial use. We don't anticipate needing to have them pay for oversight on that, but we would like to have the statement in there. So when we're prepping with an applicant who's thinking about going down this road, we can be clear about where those responsibilities will lie.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt regarding the requests on these permit fees?
Nope, sounds good.
Don't see any questions, so I'd be looking then for a motion to accept them.
I move to adopt the permit fee schedule for fiscal year 2022 as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
Yeah, a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
3, 4. So we've taken care of that. We're up to the volunteer reappointments, and Eric has given us a list.
Yep, and as in prior years, there's a number of folks whose terms are up for renewal, and I've reached out to all of them over the last couple of months, and these individuals have all expressed interest in continuing their service to the town of Williston, which I'm very appreciative of. Some folks have served for many years on these boards. So I've checked with staff. You may recall we adopted a volunteer policy a couple of years ago, and one of those items is meeting attendance. And I didn't hear any concerns from staff about attendance from any of these incumbents to be concerned with. If our staff recommendation is for the board to consider reappointing these individuals to another term, and a motion reflects that.
Thanks, Eric. Are there questions for Eric regarding the list? Don't hear any questions, so I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move to reappoint for another term the individuals currently serving on town and regional boards and commissions who have expressed an interest in continuing their positions as indicated in the report dated June 1, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye or raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got a unanimous vote on that one too. So now we're up to the point where going back to the appointments for the library board and for the CSWD. And as I did for the appointment of the for the select board, I'd like to get to the top two as a straw vote as to eliminating at least 2 of the members that were before us tonight, and then we can have a discussion about the final 2. So I'll ask Greta for her top 2.
Sherry and Justin.
Sherry and Justin?
Yes.
And Gordon?
Sherry and Steve.
Jeff?
I have Sherry and Steve also.
And I also had Sherry and Steve. So we've now have the two top contestants, Sherry and Steve, and looking for comments regarding either one. Anybody?
I think they would all have done an excellent job, and I really commend them all for having applied and being interested in this role. Sherry, you know, has a very clear interest in public service to our community, has a really strong background in, you know, city management and so forth, and budgets, which I think could be a valuable asset to the libraries. So.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to say thanks to you both. You obviously have a clear passion for what you're willing to serve for. I think either one of you would be very good candidates for this position. I would lean towards Sherry, just with her background and what I've heard this evening. Nothing negative towards you, Steve, at all. I just feel like Sherry stood out to me. Thanks.
Other comments?
Jeff here, you know, ditto what Greta and Gordon just said about thanking all four candidates. All four would have done a great job. The passion was pretty evident. I'm actually in favor of Stephen, and really basing that on the clarity in which he provided his answers. I think he really has a clear vision, and I guess that's the swaying whatever factor for me.
Thanks. My comments are similar. They're both great candidates for the job. I was impressed with the background of Sherry regarding her past jobs in New York, regarding her work with the libraries there, which certainly are more extensive than we have here in Williston, but certainly brings a lot of expertise to the position if she were to be appointed. So we've all expressed our opinions. Is there a motion for either one of the candidates?
I'd move to appoint Sherry Weston to the Library Board of Trustees until town meeting 2022, when an election for the unexpired term will be held per the provisions of the town charter.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So now we have a motion made to appoint Sherry Westman to the position. Is there any discussion on the motion?
This puts me in a slightly awkward position. But I just to fill you in, I certainly, you know, think Sherry is great, so I'm not going to vote against her. I'm not going to abstain, but even though my preference was Steve.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's unanimous, and we have appointed Sherry. And if you're out there in the remote land, congratulations, Sherry. And Steve, we look forward to your continued activity in town events, as well as the other two candidates for the position. So now we're at the Chittenden Solid Waste District, the two candidates that we have before us, and be looking for anyone who wishes to comment on either candidate. Greta?
Oh boy.
I was, as with all the candidates for library trustee, very impressed with both Hilton and Mike. I think that they would both be an excellent asset to that commission. Kelton I stood out for me. I understand there are some issues, where he may have to recuse himself, but his education, his experience, his ideas on innovation and technology, I think really stood out for me.
Thanks. Other comments?
Well, it was very clear to me that, sorry, I'm going to get the name. Kelton, he's on top of the industry. Makes sense why. But I do worry about the conflict of interest aspect of it, and if that's going to impede his ability to be an effective commission member. My suspicion is he'll be outspoken, which is good. And he understood, I thought he gave a great answer about how does he represent Williston? So I'm curious if others see the potential for a conflict of interest to be a barrier to Kelton being the commissioner.
Other comments?
Again, both candidates, thank you for throwing your hat in the ring for this. I do feel both were very well spoken this evening, and I would agree with Greta around Kelton's, definitely innovation and being involved in the day-to-day operations of what we're looking for. I do share Jeff's concern on the conflict of interest, even though it might not come up as much as Kelton might think. I do think it's going to be somewhat of a barrier, and that is a concern for me as well. Yeah. That being said, I'm still weighing on my decision.
I think Kelton answered the question fairly well as far as conflict of interest goes, and believe that he has a wealth of experience in the field, as does Mike. But I think that Kelton would handle any conflict of interest well and recuse himself when there's the occasion to do so. But so he would be my choice. So given the comments, any further comments?
One quick question, not a comment, quick question. If Kelton does need to recluse himself, can Kaylin step in?
She could do that. Certainly if he were to be at a meeting, or hopefully he would know in advance that there's going to be a conflict, and he would ask Kaylin to sit in.
Okay, that helps with my concern.
Yeah. So I'd be looking for a motion.
I don't want to mess up the last name, but I will move to appoint Kelton Bogaski to the Chittenden Solid Waste District Board of Commissioners for a 2-year term through May 31st, 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yes, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's unanimous there. And we're now up to the manager's report.
We'll be brief this evening.
Thank you.
Getting into the late hour here, but just briefly, you have the finance report for April from Shirley. So in the interest of time, unless there's a pressing question for Shirley, if there's any questions, staff can follow up with those as well. Local option tax report for the last quarter returned very well. We're seeing ourselves above budget as we've planned for 3 quarters of the fiscal year. So we'll be interested to see where we end up here to close the fiscal year. But all good news on the local option tax front for something that was very unpredictable about a year ago. So good news to report there this evening. And we also, the culvert we mentioned, the Muddy Brook Culvert Project, the structures grant, we have received it for $175,000. We're trying to learn just some rulemaking with that and implementation. So hopefully we'll be coming back next month or so saying that we'll work to decrease our obligation for that project for Muddy Brook. And the discussion will be how to fill in the remaining gap. So that was good news. And then finally this evening, we've debuted our new hybrid meeting system. I just want to thank Town Meeting TV for all their help. This is a pilot project, and they selected Williston to be the town to pilot this effort in, and this is the first ever meeting. So we've just about made it through for an extra long meeting this evening. So I just want to recognize that, and that some of their staff is here. And for the board, just to please provide any feedback to me as we move ahead. This is very much a work in progress still, with having a television. We'll likely have some different setups here. We'll have the full board here. Maybe about when having the public back in as well, but we kind of threw all the different possibilities tonight, and it seems like it's worked pretty well. So interested in the board's feedback moving ahead, and we can chat offline as well.
Good, thank you. And I echo Eric's comments regarding our TV crew here tonight. Technical support, appreciate it very much. Is there any other business to talk about tonight? Hearing none, I will declare us adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Have a good night.
Night, Jeff.
Night, Jeff.
Good night. Good night.